Clemson head football coach Dabo Swinney is quoted as saying, "Sometimes the best way to grow is to be uncomfortable." And for today's athlete, few decisions are more uncomfortable or more defining than stepping into the transfer portal. Welcome to today's episode, New Team, Same Journey, Navigating the Transfer Portal. All right, welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it relates to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have Freed-Hardeman men's basketball player Lane Lauderbaugh on today's episode. Lane, welcome to the program.
Appreciate you having me.
For our listeners that don't know Lane was one of the senior members of the men's basketball team this year for Freed-Hardeman, and this was his final year to play, and he transferred to Freed-Hardeman from Indiana University Southeast and for his final season here at Freed-Hardeman. And I'd say he brought some luck to the Lions because ended up winning it all for the second time in 3 years, in a huge part because of you. So had a lot of success this year and kind of adjusting to a new program after being at IU Southeast for 3 seasons. So I thought he'd be good to talk about his experience with transferring from one school to the other. And so we're going to get into that topic today. Before we get started, Lane, tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners that might not know you, a little bit about your background, where you're from, family, basketball experience, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so my name's Lane Lauderbaugh. I am, like you said, I'm a senior at Freed and did my past 3 years at IU Southeast in New Albany, Indiana. I'm originally from Greensburg, Indiana, which is a small town. It's probably like an hour south of Indy, almost by Cincy too, about 45 from Cincy. I'm in a blended family, so I have one full brother, he's younger than me. His name's Luke. He's 16. Then I have 3 step siblings. I've got my brother Lane, which is crazy. We both got the same name, but yeah. And then I've got 2 sisters, Eliza and Maddie. I played at South Decatur High School. Yeah, I had a cool high school career there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I looked up because I didn't know. I'm from Evansville, so I was trying to figure out, okay, where is Greensburg in comparison to Evansville? Kind of more on the northern, I guess, northeast part of the state. And he said he's from a small town, everyone, but Greensburg population, it says when I looked it up, 12,310. Here in Henderson, it's 6,000. So your small town coming from a town like that, and then New Albany, even bigger than that, around the 30,000. Coming to Henderson, Tennessee, 6,000 is the population here. So probably a little bit of a culture shock coming from what you thought maybe was a small town to an even smaller town to play basketball here in the small town of Henderson, Tennessee. So and also got to mention this. I had Lane in class the first semester he was here for speech communications, and his first experience coming here, he got his car stolen. So he comes up and says, I got to go to Jackson to pick up my car. I'm like, oh, okay. Is it broke down? He's like, well, someone stole it. So I was like, you come to Henderson, a rude awakening. It's like, hey, I'm here to play basketball. And then someone steals your car. There's a little problem around first semester when you're here. So he adjusted to that, got through it, and everything was, I think, good after that. So take me back a little bit to your experience with your last semester at IU Southeast. And you had played here at Freed-Hardeman for the opening round the year before. So you were a little bit familiar about where Henderson was just from being here for the opening round the year before. What made you make the decision for your final year to maybe make a change and come to a different school? What are some things that went through your mind when you made that decision?
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to take it back a year further. After my sophomore season, I debated on maybe transferring because I had a pretty decent year there. I averaged 17 at IUS and ended up, talking to coach, and we thought that the best thing for me was to have one more year, just have the best year I could, and then maybe after that year transfer to somewhere else. Yeah. And that's what I ended up doing. So kind of the whole year, it was kind of known like throughout the team that this would be my last year at IUS. Ended up having a pretty decent season. Talked to coach after the season. He kind of knew what was up, and just ended up at Freed. Coach Stutz, it's crazy. I put a Twitter post up, X post up, the day like I got my highlights and everything put together in my stats, and I threw that up there on X. And Coach Stutz was one of the first people, like within an hour or two, he reached out. And obviously I was familiar because we played each other in the first round, like you said, and they ended up knocking us out. But it was, we were a 16 seed, so we were happy to be there. But No, he expressed interest from the jump, and it was a little bit crazy at first when I first put my name in there because there was a lot of schools that were interested. So it wasn't like just Freed right off the bat, but I was definitely like, that was one of my top options from the beginning because of Coach Stutz. Like, we hopped on the phone probably the next day, and he just seemed super down to earth and just seemed a lot more genuine than some of the other coaches that had reached out, which you don't always see that in college basketball.
And so you mentioned you had success at IU Southeast, averaged about 20, almost 21 points a game. And I talked to Coach Stutz on the same podcast here about the upcoming season about a year ago. And I asked, who you got coming in? He mentioned your name specifically, and we were a little bit familiar with I do PA for the basketball game. So I remember calling your name quite a bit during that opening round. You were one of the leading scorers on the Grenadiers, I guess is how you say it, IU Southeast. And he had said, and one of the things that we talk about with our players is, this is some of the things that you've done at your program. It might not be exactly the same way depending on the role that you play with our team. And that's a big thing he stresses is knowing your role, buying into the culture. As you know, anybody that has seen Freed-Hardeman basketball, you don't just have 5 guys that go out there. You got 10 guys that play pretty much the same amount of time. They just come in at every 4 or 5 minutes. So when we think about these, the role that you play on the team, maybe what are some of the challenges that you had coming from a team maybe where you played a lot of minutes coming into a team where maybe you played a different role? What were some of the challenges with that?
Yeah, so that was one of the first things that he mentioned, like that they did the 5 in, 5 out, which I don't even know if I noticed that when we played them the first time. But yeah, that was actually something that I really liked because it keeps everyone fresh. Like, I think I played 34, 35 minutes a game when I was at IU Southeast, and by the end of the season, man, you're so tired. Like, with our practice schedule was a little more harsh as well at IUS than here, so you definitely feel that throughout the season. And I think it felt like this year, every time I went in, like I was like, I couldn't wait to get back in. Yeah. And when I was out there, it's like, I'm getting subbed out. But then you kind of just think about it like those guys on the bench are ready to go, just like I am. So you kind of really buy into it. It definitely took me a little bit, but once I kind of figured out that this is the best for the team, like, it was pretty easy for me because I'm a team first guy at the end of the day. So.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that was a challenge, maybe adjusting to that. What would you say is the hardest part that for you coming into a new program? What was maybe the biggest challenge you had? Right.
So, naturally, like, as humans, you wanna just do the best you can. So obviously, coming off, my averages were a lot higher at IU Southeast because I played the whole game, and I think adjusting to that, like, knowing that mentally, like, you're like, I'll have games where I have 5 points, and I'm like, man, I really let the guys down. But then I look up, we're winning by 20. It's like, well, I must have did something right. You know what I mean? So you kind of just got to find your role. And it was definitely tough at first to adjust to that because it had been 2 years where I was kind of, one of the main scorers on my team. So I feel like once I got adjusted to that, though, it just became so much more fun, and you love playing with your teammates. Like, you never know which game is going to be yours or which one's going to be Phil's or Rico's. Sam when he was playing, like, everyone has their game, so it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, they spread the love for sure, and it's really hard for teams to prepare for guys when you got 10 that could put up points on you any given night. It's hard to prepare who we're going to try to isolate for this game, and then the other guy's going to go off and score a bunch of points.
I always was thinking about that during the season. Like, what do the other team's scouting reports look like? Because we have ours where we're usually highlighting 2 or 3 guys that we really want to stop. And I'm thinking, once we got late in the season, like, there had been so many players on our team that had scored at least 10 or 15 in a game, and it's like, what do you even do? And it really, I think that culminated in how we eventually won the national championship because I imagine we're very hard to prepare for this year.
Yeah, I'm thinking when you're scouting, it's like you mentioned, 2 or 3 guys tend to score a lot of the points, kind of how you were at IU Southeast. You were probably one of the ones we were really focusing in on when we played you in the opening round. It's like, oh, this guy averages 20 a game. Let's make sure we try to stop him. Probably similar to the Northwestern Iowa game, right? We had Jalen Langsey, and we also had Alex Van Kalsbeek, who averaged 29 a game. So maybe it's a little easier from that standpoint. Well, let's try to keep them under their average and then try to figure out the other stuff along the way. With Freed-Hardeman, you could have 7 or 8 guys at any given point that's going to put up 20 points on you. So it's really hard to prepare for that. You mentioned your teammates a little bit here at Freed-Hardeman, as well as your teammates back in IU Southeast. How did you go about building that trust and maybe that camaraderie a little bit with a new team for just being here 1 year? How long did that take to develop? And maybe what are some things that maybe helped that along as far as how you had that interaction with your teammates and how you kind of got along so well?
Yeah, I think Coach Stutz did a really good job of providing us opportunities like off the court to bond, especially when we were on road trips. Like we went to different basketball. We went to Tennessee game. We went to Hawks game when we were in Atlanta. Just stuff like that. And then when you're back on campus at Freed, it's like you're in Henderson, Tennessee. Yeah, there's not really much to do. So you're just with your guys all the time. And I think that's a big reason why Freed's been successful in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years at this point, just because everyone's so bought in. Stutz and Grant Burns have done just a great job of getting guys to buy in, and it was no different this year. I mean, we were, I would say, very close, like as a team. Like almost, it's like sometimes it's like I'm with these guys all day, all night, and my girlfriend's like, I'm not getting a text from you. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I haven't been on my phone. I've been, doing whatever. Yeah.
Bonding with the guys.
Right.
And it's interesting too. I talked to Coach Stutz, and 2 years prior, he had won the national championship. And I talked to him earlier on this season, and he said, I think this is the most connected group of guys that we've had in a while. And that's 2 years ago, we just won the national championship. You think you got to be connected to do that. He said this team was the most connected he's coached in his, 8-9 seasons that he's been here. A lot of the guys were new. We had a lot of freshmen coming in, some transfers coming in. A lot of guys had left, for, since that championship year, with some guys going to NCAA D1 schools. And so I think he kind of viewed it as maybe it's going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year with trying to adjust to some of these new guys. And we ended up winning it all.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the how everyone was so connected, buying into that culture, buying into the game plan, like you had mentioned. Is there a certain time in the season that when you were going throughout the season that you felt like, all right, I know kind of what I'm supposed to be doing here. I know my role. I feel like I'm kind of settling in a little bit. How long did that take into the season to feel that way?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there was a specific game. I think it might have just been like a culmination of the practices. And then once we got adjusted, so we switched the lineup. I believe it was homecoming Faulkner game, and we did it a lot different, and we were just clicking that game. And I think ever since that game against Faulkner, like, we just kind of turned the page. And then I would say another game that I really realized that we were something serious, and we all kind of did, was against Cumberland's at Cumberland's, because that was I
think number 3 at the time, and we beat them by 20-something points. Yeah,
that was awesome. Like, it felt like we could do no wrong out there. Like, everything was just clicking. So I would say those 2 games for me made me realize like my role, and I think a lot of other guys realize their roles, and no matter what it is, like if it's helping the team win, you just have to buy into it.
Yeah. And we had, of course, Sam Powell midway through the season. I think I don't remember how many games in, 9 or 10 games in, maybe a little longer than that, maybe 19. I can't remember. Gets hurt, and he's one of the 2 players that were from that national championship team from 2 years ago. So I'm sure that kind of adjusted the lineup a little more. I think he might have been in the first 5 that came in, so might have been a few adjustments there. How did injuries and different things, setbacks, maybe contribute to some of that connected, as far as how you were connected to your teammates as well?
Yeah, I thought everybody on the team had a big like next man up mindset. For sure, because once Sam went down, there was obviously that's one of our best players. I mean, everyone on the team's important, and I think Cam Hudson ended up stepping in for him, and he did his role well, defend, rebound, just be active out there. And I think he really stepped up whenever Sam went down, for sure.
So we talk a lot about, and you see it so much in NCAA, NAIA, you just see guys, they transfer, teams every year. You'll see new guys that come in, and you'll be like, oh, this is a completely different team than we saw last year, just because of the transfer portal and all those things. A lot of times, maybe some of these changes aren't always good changes. You might see guys go to another school and it doesn't work out well. They end up going somewhere else later. For you, I think it worked out very well. I think you had a good experience, obviously winning the national championship, but the way that you talk about your teammates, it was a good experience, not just on the court, but also the bond you had with the guys. What do you think made it such a good experience for you compared to maybe others that maybe don't have that same experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you were talking about guys that just kind of bounce around different schools. I think that applies a lot more in Division I. You'll see, with the NIL, like guys are just the top bidder is who's getting a lot of these guys. And then you end up building your team that way, and you're not really building for people, you're building for statistics and just like things you want to see on the floor. And I think a big thing that Coach Stutz and Coach Burns did was just like build players first, like people first. He did a great job of that this year, just picking the right guys based on character, and we just ended up, getting along really well on and off the court. So I kudos to him for that.
Yeah. Any habits that you had to shift from your experience at IU Southeast coming to a school maybe where they focus on a little bit different things, like you mentioned, building character and players and things? Not that they don't do that at other schools, but maybe more of an intentional focus here to help that be the forefront of what you're doing, and in the stats and all that stuff hopefully will follow from that. But any things that you had to change from a preparation standpoint, habits that you usually would go through here at Freed-Hardeman, maybe what are some things that changed from one school to another?
Yeah, I think a few things, like trusting my teammates, I think was very easy here, and that was something that they preached from the get-go. And we also we met like throughout the season reading books together, like we had book study, and I think we read some good books. It kind of preached a lot of things that Coach Stutz was wanting, trusting each other, building character, kind of believing in like a common goal. And I think once everyone kind of bought into that, and it made it a lot easier just for us to win. It just started flowing. I think, once again, kudos to him. Like, he just did a great job of building a good culture, because that's kind of what you have to have first, and especially in NAIA, like, you have to have a good culture. Everyone has talented players, but it's everyone together, not just like a few guys that are good and then they have their own agendas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Coach Stutz is a big like slogan guy too. Yeah. So like it was one year it was elite is earned, and then we talked about raising the standard this year. So part of that culture goes back to what do we want to be known for? What do we want our program to do to have success? If you had to say maybe one thing that stands out about Freed as far as that culture, you mentioned that a little bit already, but what is it about Freed-Hardeman with the culture here that's allowed us to have success, especially under Coach Stutz?
I think with Freed, like the 5 in, 5 out thing, and just being like relentless on the floor. Like, I think you really see if you watch the Northwestern game, like it looked like we were
exhausted at the end.
Dude, yeah, so it looked like we were dead in the water, like on the scoreboard. But then you're watching the game, and it's like, these guys are fresh, and Northwestern is kind of tired. Like, they're bending over, they're turning the ball over, all that.
Nothing on their shot. The 3-point shots were coming up short towards the end. They were just all tired. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just a culmination of what Coach Stutz and Coach Grant Burns have kind of built on, just like relentless. Like, we're never going to stop. Like, no matter what the scoreboard says, you just keep your head down, stick to the game plan, stick to the scout, and we're going to give it a shot at the end. And we ended up coming through on that one. But I think that game was an example of kind of what they preach here at Freed.
Yeah, I think Northwestern might have been the best team in that tournament, and we had them in the first game of the 16. I was like, man, I feel like we should have been playing them maybe in the championship game, not in the first round of the round of 16. So, and kudos to Northwestern for having such a great season, 2 great players that we had to navigate through to get there. But as you said, part of that goes back to the culture. Like you would say, sometimes you'd be feeling like you didn't have a great game, and you'd look up and we were up 20, and that just goes to show you, just keeping your head down, putting in the work. And sometimes, all of that stuff, comes out how it needs to. But a lot of that is just everybody has their mindset in the right place, keeping focus on what's best for the team, not always what's best for the individual. So I think that helps a lot to kind of keep that focus as well. And I agree with you. I think Coach Stutz has always done a great job with that. And I think Grant Burns will continue to do that as well, because it's a very much a team effort on a lot of what they're doing there. Kind of last question here, I guess, unless there's anything else that you want to add. What would you say to an athlete that maybe this year they're thinking about maybe making a change next year, entering the process of maybe transferring to another school? Is there anything that you would tell them to think about, what mistakes to avoid, all that kind of stuff as they transfer to a new school?
Yeah, I would say a big thing is the grass is not always greener. So wherever you're at, like, it could be a tough situation, but you really want to make sure that whatever situation you're going to is going to be, beneficial to you and beneficial to the school you're going to, because a lot of players kind of just look for maybe just a bigger role or, just to get their stats up at another school, but sometimes that's not always the best experience. And I would say another thing is just know what you're looking for before you go into the portal. So if you're wanting to have a bigger role, if you're wanting to win a championship, if you're wanting to, get a scholarship, but maybe not play as much, you just make sure you have what you want and like at the forefront and tell the people that are recruiting you that, like, tell the coaches, this is what I'm looking for, because you don't want to, commit to something and then realize this isn't even really what I wanted. Yeah. And I think, me and Coach Stutz did a great job of, communicating that to each other. And I think that's why it worked out pretty good here for me this year.
Yeah. So communication would be a big part of that, both from the coach's standpoint as well as the player's standpoint, making sure you're on the same page and making sure everybody feels comfortable with the role that you're going to play. I think that's a big part of it. For all the listeners that maybe Lane will be graduating, I guess this is his last year. What's next for Lane Lauderbaugh? Where's he going to go? Where's he going to work? Does any of that planned out yet?
It's in the works. So what I've done, I got an agent last summer, and he's been working to see if I could get a grad transfer waiver, and that would have to be NCAA. So the rules are changing all the time, but as of now, we're trying to get a fifth year there, but I'm not going to put too many eggs in that basket. So I'd say if that doesn't work out, I'm going to go back home and work. My parents own a bar and grill back home called the Union. They mentioned it a billion times.
On the NAIA. Yes. Yeah, they said he wanted the cheese fries.
Yes. See, and they made that up. They made their own promotion, right. So it was pretty funny though. Everyone loved it back home, and we actually did have a few more customers come in talking about that. Nice. So that was pretty cool. But I'd probably work there for the meantime, and then try to eventually do something in my major, which is marketing, and then I have like a little concentration in sales and entrepreneurship. So I'd probably eventually try to get into that line of work. But for the meantime, just seeing if I can get a fifth year, and then if that doesn't work out, go into the workforce. So.
Having to go and work now.
Yep.
So it's funny you mentioned your agent, and there was a Facebook page where it talked about your success at the national championship. My son was super excited because the picture they used was one of the ones that he had taken and
cool.
shared it with whoever. I don't even know where he shares it, but he said, I think I took that picture, and it was on there, you driving to the goal. So he was excited. Fan favorite, our family's a big fan of yours as well as all the other Lions. So it was kind of cool to see the success that you all had. This year, we follow you all year long, obviously, with me working the games, and they're coming to all the games. My son takes pictures of the games, so we were able to be there for the Fab 4 games, and getting to be there and experience that for the second time was really cool. Great to have you for this final year here at Freed-Hardeman. Did a great job and played your role well. So the entire Freed-Hardeman family is thankful to have you for this year. Big part in that championship was because of you in those final 2 games especially. So appreciate you coming in today and talking about your experience, and anything else that you want to share before we're done.
I would just say shout out to my family, my dad, Neil, Sarah, my brother, Luke, Eliza, Lane, and then Maddie, and then my girlfriend, Lexi. I'd say, and then God, of course. I mean, you got to thank God. So, I'd say shout out to all those people. Yeah. And I appreciate you inviting me on here. It was a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, as we wrap up today, we'd like to thank you for listening to today's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Special thanks again to Lane Lauderbaugh for being my guest this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and follow the podcast to be notified of upcoming episodes. Also encourage you to share this podcast with a friend, colleague, athlete, or coach you think might benefit from the content discussed. You can listen to the Playing with a Purpose podcast each week on Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also catch the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Freed-Hardeman Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character, the NAIA Champions of Character website at naia.org/champions of character, and on the Ministry League Podcast Network. Till next time, remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard, it's about the character you build along the way. We'll see you next time on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.